G'day, guys, and welcome to another global update. This is a global update for the February, was it 26th of February? Wow. The year is starting going. We're basically, um, 2 months gone. So, all right, let's get straight into it. Oops. Starting with our global trends. Good old Trump. His Trump train is fast and um, running across the country, and it's doing well. Um, he delivered the State of the Union address. Well, last night our time, or sorry, last night his time, um, mid-afternoon our time, and he turned it into the longest speech ever given to Congress, to both sittings, joint houses, and by a president. It was an hour. It was an hour and 47. Uh, beat, I think it was Obama's State of the Union, which was about an hour 30. The guy, for an 80-year-old, he's got some stamina behind him, and it wasn't a boring speech if you did see it. If you don't, go and watch the highlights. There was medals awarded and to some very very worthy candidates. There was the M8. What was it? Was the um, the pilot that got shot while getting Maduro. He was shot 4 times in the leg and still finished the mission, basically saving everyone on his helicopter. There was the pilot from who'd been in 3 wars, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and then Vietnam. Navy captain, 100-year-old guy, uh, shot down 4 MiGs during the Korean War or Vietnamese War. It was just a phenomenal story to hear that, and both of them got the Medal of Honor, which was fascinating. And none of the Democrats stood up to applaud these people. So you can see where those guys are. They are literally against America, and it's the same as um, the Labor Party in that out here, and the Labor Party in the UK, and the lefty Labor aligned union movement parties in Europe. They're against the people. They're only in it for their own power base, and they're only in it for their own self-interest. And you can see it during the speech with the way that the Democrats were going. The the country in the US, and I've been talking to a lot of my friends on the ground over there. If they're in red states, the red states are flying. If they're in blue states, everyone's leaving for a red state. The Democratic run blue states have just been driven into the ground, and into the ground at a fast rate of knots. Um, a guy that I know that lives here in Asia actually runs a very large property. It's a vulture fund. And what a vulture fund does is it goes and picks up property, basically off people that are on the bones of their ass and can't get it. Oh, excuse me, I've got a bit of a chest infection. Um, they they are circling US blue states, and especially the big blue cities: New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, um, San Francisco, Portland in Oregon. He did mention a couple of others. Um, Austin in Texas. He said that's a very long shot, but he said New York, they expect to be able to pick up buildings in New York for cents on the dollar. And when I mean cents, he's talking, 10 cents on the dollar, not 50 cents or 90 cents. And that's what they're looking for, and they're starting to get ready that there is about to be a big wave. The only problem with funds like that is they need to hold them for long times, and these guys have got deep pockets and large amounts of people behind them that can hold on to these type of properties, and they just hold them on for a long period of time and take them off people's hands that can't sell them anywhere else, and run away. Um, and and that's pretty much how Donald Trump made his career, by the Commodore Hotel and then Trump Tower. Was during the late 1970s, early 1980s, when New York was in a massive slump. It was a shithole, and a real shithole, worse than what it is now, but it's headed back that way. So basically, Trump's union address showed the big divide between the Dems and the GOP, the Republicans. It showed the divide of those that are for America and for making America great again, and wanting to drive a great economy. And it's horrendous to think that you can have elected leaders of a country, and this applies to Australia as well, that you can have elected leaders of a country who care more about a shithole in Africa than they do about the country that they're a representative of. And in my mind, that is pure treason. And if that is your stance, there should be an automatic way of throwing you either in jail, definitely out of politics, but possibly in jail for treason against the country. All politicians should have no allegiance to any other country other than the one that they represent. And if you do, it's automatic. It should be an automatic ruling of treason, and away you go. I think we're too lenient on that, especially at the moment, and we've made it too easy for people to basically piss all the wealth and everything of a nation away. But it's we've still got some years of pain ahead. And I just hope that what happens in the US is not wasted, especially these 4 years of Trump, that they're not wasted on, 4 years to 8 years afterwards of just a Democrat president that gets reelected because people miss their free stuff. People have got to stop thinking about themselves and start thinking about the greater part of society. And you can see there's a massive divide with that, all around the world, not just in the US. But when you get leaders that put the country first and push ahead with basically what are just common sense policies. Most of Trump's policies are Democrat policies. The deportation of migrants is an Obama policy. Oh, excuse me. The closing the southern border is a Clinton policy, right? So these are Democrat policies that he's bringing manufacturing back to the US, supporting the US steel industry, bring in creating a great, strong middle class. These are all Democrat policies from past gone by. And that's what I've always said. Trump is a Democrat, but he found a way to get elected in the Republican Party. That goes to show you how far left that politics has gone in the US. That um, basically someone touting originalist Democrat policies from mid 90s and early 2000s or mid 2000s gets elected as a Republican. Um, but the people support it because the people do support those policies. Centrist policies, common sense policies, people will support, and they support in droves. So the union is strong in the good old USA. It will be good for us. Take one instance, the US beef herd is about 45 million cattle down. The Australian herd's 7 to 8 million cattle down, might be a bit more, but we can grow our herd a lot quicker than what they can in America. We've got a bigger industry to support that. So we can be real winners off the back of this if we pull our fingers out of our ass and actually get on board some of this stuff and find the bits and pieces of industries where we can really help what's over there. We can grow our own economy through the back of it. But what is needed in the US is the industries that our government out here hate: mining, agriculture, small engineering businesses that are doing specific products. Our government hates. So we'll never win off the back of this until we get rid of our current government. So it's been a great first year of Trump, especially if you're in a red state. Everyone I talk to over there that are in red states are loving it, and they're building back their workforces, especially in, if you want to call it, the dirty jobs, manufacturing, welders, uh, electricians, boiler makers, diesel mechanics, all those sort of people are needed in droves. The mining industries in the US are starting to ramp up. The oil and gas industry is ramping up. There's new refinery capacity being built. There's new wells being drilled. There's new gas fields being opened up. All off the back of the energy independence movement that's happening. So if you've got a leader that wants it, you can do it. And good on Trump and his team. Keep it up. Um, our little segment that we continue with the war is coming in the EU. Things that I've been saying for a while, migrants to build army. Well, it's been open now that in media outlets and in at the European Security Council that's just happened, they're now talking openly and are getting ready to start offering citizenship for military service for illegals. It is happening. Conscription is gaining momentum in more and more EU countries, 18-year-old to 24-year-olds having to serve military time. They are gathering momentum faster now than before. They really are looking to bring the war with Russia to a head sooner rather than later, and it is going to be a disastrous outcome for Europe. Europe does not survive this at all. Europe will be a vastly different place come the end of, say, 2035, once all this settles and the war's finished and there is millions of dead people again. Um, Europe will not be what it is. Germany may be five different countries. France may be three or four different countries. Then a lot of the Eastern European nations may be split along ethnic lines and that. So what the European leaders in Brussels are doing are just they're driving self-destruction. One of the other things that was interesting that come out of the European Security Conference was um, governments like France are dropping American-based technology, and France has dropped Zoom and Teams um, and are using open-sourced software. Now, the reason you do that is the first sign that you are identifying who is your enemy, and you're identifying that you do not hold uh, the means for your enemy to cripple yourself. Right. So France is saying that Zoom and Teams, which is owned by US companies, they are the enemy. So we need to have an alternative. Germany is doing the same thing with computer systems. They are going to more open source computer systems to drive their software dropping Oracle. And one of the other countries um, at the security conference said that they will sign up to do the same thing. Now, this is all the signs that happen before war happens. Um, War doesn't just happen overnight, right? It doesn't just start with the firing of the gun. It starts with the 3, 4, 5 years beforehand, or 10 years beforehand, um, of all the moves made by politicians all along the lines to drive it to the point where there is no other outcome other than to shoot your way out. And this is how civil unrest happens. This is how civil wars start. It all happens the same thing. Governments drive the population to a certain point where talking and voting no longer fixes any of the problems. So the only way to fix it is shoot your way out of it. And the old classic saying of you vote your way into communism, but you need to shoot your way out of it is pretty much standard for every country that's ever gone down this path. It is what's happened with China. It's what's happened in Vietnam. It's what's happened in the older USSR. It's what's happened in Chile. Uh, you know, uh, several South American nations that have fought their way out. They've all had to do it with a gun. Some of them stupidly have got their way in there with the gun, and some got their way out. Iran. The only way Iran's getting out of the tyrannical way that it's in is it's going to have to fight some sort of civil war. It's going to be messy, but that's because people got complacent. They allowed people to distract them, and then they voted in their own doom and gloom. Cuba voted in its own doom and gloom, right? Um, People are the problem, and politicians that know how to sway the people are the evil that we are fighting here. Russia didn't want to invade Ukraine. It had to look after its citizens in the Donbass and the Luhansk regions. Zelensky in the European Union. Zelensky was installed, was it 2014, to be the person that took Ukraine into war with Russia. The Minsk agreements, 1 and 2. The Europeans have openly said that they were false agreements. Right? All this leads to war. Russia had no choice other than to defend itself by firing the first bullet. And we are now starting to see the massive ramp up in Europe to fight the evil Russians when they are engineering it for their own self-interest. It's basically to hide all the billions and probably trillions of dollars that have been stolen through the governments and through the bills and through the waste. Most debt of nations is actually being stolen. And it's been stolen through programs that do not help citizenry of the nations that are doing it. So have a look at Australia. We have sent $50 billion to Afghanistan and the Taliban. That doesn't help Australia. That makes us weaker. But we still do it. We allow our politicians to steal our money by borrowing more. And we've got to get smarter about who we vote into our chambers. And most people are dumb. They're dumb as a fucking box of hammers because they come from the position of self-interest all the time. And Europe is in the place now where it's got an unelected government in Brussels that is taking it to war that the citizenry of Europe do not want. The only people that want it are the politicians. And that's why I say, and I've said it numerous times, I am scared of the person that wants to become a politician rather than the politician that is already there. Because the politician that's already there, I know who they are. The person that wants to become a politician, are you worse than the people that are already there? Or are you just lying? Because most people aren't doing it for the right reasons. They may say they are, but as soon as they get down there, I tell you now, they don't do it for the right reasons. So there we go. Watch out, people, because war is coming and we're going to end up with it on multiple fronts. And another extension of that is the stupid seizure of the Russian private assets. It's basically an act of war to steal a private individual's assets for no real reason. Russia is not the aggressor. never has been, and never will be an aggressor towards Europe. No need to. They have more than Europe. They have more than most countries in the world. They are basically now a self-supporting nation due to all these sanctions. Um, it was an act of war for Europe and the US to seize Russian assets. One of the most famous things and it was a straight out blackmail to Abramovich, was you need to transfer us $2.5 billion immediately, or we seize all your assets. So they basically gave him a tax bill of $2.5 billion. He either paid that or he lost everything. Right? That's warfare. It mightn't be with a gun, but it's warfare. The sanctions on all the oligarchs, um, most of them are just private individuals. Some of them had ties to the government. Most of them didn't. They were down the tree. Um, they had businesses outside of Russia, not inside Russia, and they got their assets seized because they were easy to seize. They were outside of Russia. They were easy to seize. The money that is being seized by the EU is about $250 billion, but Russia holds over $500 billion of EU assets, which it has now seized. It's the counter move. Um, and Europe is so pissed off that Russia did that is also part of the reason that it's just got into a frenzy and is all about war. So every move Europe does is all about creating war. The other thing that's happened with the seizure of individual assets goes to show you that all they have to do is nominate a country or a people that you're no longer friendly. We're going to hold your assets. We're going to seize your assets. Um, if you have assets in Europe, I would be removing them into Asia in a millisecond. Um, there is going to be a time where countries need to pick sides against um, Europe and what will be Asia. It'll be Russia, India, China, possibly a lot of the Middle Eastern nations that will all be on war footing. So you'll need to have your assets outside of Europe. And we are seeing that happen now, that those in the know are moving their assets, especially their car collections, their wine collections, their art collections, their gold, silver. It's all flooding um, into Asia. Some of the gold vaults in Singapore now are full. You can no longer put anything in there full, and they're building more. So that goes to show you the amount of money and assets that are moving out of Europe. And as I've said in a few of these things before, the precursor to anything to do with war or anything to do with any action is the movement of money, the movement of assets, because those in the know don't want their assets confiscated during war. And those in the know don't want to lose their assets. And they know that war is coming. So they're moving their assets. Right. And that, in a way, is what kept Russia a bit off guard, is they didn't think that they were going to be in the firing line um, of this type of movement. They got basically blindsided into some respect, because they were being good global citizens. And then all of a sudden, bang, Europe seizes assets. Europe starts to create the war drums, and sanctions are applied. Now, the sanctions on Russia have been a greatest gift to Russia, because it's basically made Russia self-sufficient. It's made the Russian economy grow beyond anything that it ever would if it wasn't sanctioned. The wealth in Russia is growing. The people in Russia in most places are getting wealthier and wealthier and wealthier because the economy is now producing and using internally because it can't get a lot of external goods. It's trading with other nations that it may not have normally traded with, right? Heavily trading with China, heavily trading with India, where if they were freely allowed to move a lot of oil and gas into the US and into Europe without some restrictions, they wouldn't have had to seek alternate markets. But now they've sought alternate markets. They found that those markets are able to do deals in different currencies on better terms, in a friendlier way, and with larger volumes. So the West has lost because of idiots in parliaments that think that war is the way to go. I want to touch on this, and um, I see this Epstein thing as a totally different thing to what at most of it's been reported. The influence peddling and the pedophilia that's going around is the smokescreen. It's the easy tearjerker for those people in the community that read headlines and don't want to dig any further. Most of the women and girls that have been abused weren't 11-year-olds and any of that sort of stuff. Half of that stuff is the crazy bullshit that has been made up. Most of it is just there is big groups, and it's been going on since the Romans, right? You want to be inside influence, you find the people that are connectors, you join the networks, everyone sort of moves in the same circles. Those that want to indulge in drugs and girls and all that sort of stuff, they find their own little thing, and it's probably a very small cohort of everyone that's in the lists, that everyone that was connected. Jeffrey Epstein was a very, very good networker. He was a very good person at being able to connect people for deals. And I would say that Ghislaine Maxwell, who is undoubtedly a Mossad spy, there is no ifs, buts, or maybe, she took over from her old man, Robert Maxwell, and she had very big influence and information gathering skills, was trained all her life to do so, private schools and stuff. And that's where a lot of it happens, because private schools is where the influence starts and where the connection starts. Jeffrey Epstein was tapped on the shoulder. He was a good talker. He was a good trader. He was able to do it, and they became the perfect pair to work. Her spy connections with MI5, MI6, whichever ones it was, with Mossad and the CIA, and Jeffrey's world of being able to connect money, do the deals, and be the party life. Now, a lot of this still goes on today. There is yacht parties. There is young girls that want to be famous, and they put themselves into stupid situations. This happens all the time, and it's not just young girls; it's young guys as well. And it's the fame culture. Hollywood, especially, was built on it, and it just becomes the circle. There's been a few people that said if you were big in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s and are not mentioned in the Epstein files, you are basically irrelevant to the power circles. And it would be true, because anyone who was of relevance to either the intelligence community or to the arms dealing community, the shady deals community, so doing deals between shady nations. They normally always needed a middleman like Epstein. Khashoggi was a previous version of this with his big yachts and high flash. Um, and Epstein basically come to providence after Khashoggi ultimately died. Now, whether Khashoggi died of natural causes or of natural causes with lead, um, no one's really certain. But there is definitely a continuation of similar behavior and similar works and connections and deal making. You know, someone who comes from basically nowhere to being worth $800 million purely and simply because they're doing the deals for nations and people that can't do the deals. So things like think of blood diamonds and cobalt and all this sort of stuff out of sanction African nations. We're talking arms and parts of arms that get traded between sanctioned countries and unsanctioned countries because the governments and the companies in those countries can't be seen to be doing the deals. People like Epstein do the deals. And there's more than just one. He is the one that they're currently focused on. There will be a new Epstein. There will be a new Ghislaine Maxwell. Um, there will be yacht parties and influence peddling and everything. It will be in a new circle right now. It will be set up again and it'll be going again because the world needs these type of people. They are shady, they are shitty, they are crooked, they are everything that you probably don't want in a respectful society. But guess what? When you've got politicians and you've got corporations and you've got, let's say, scrupulous people that all they care about is themselves and money, they don't care about the world around them and the other people around them, you're always going to have the Khashoggis and the Epsteins of the world. The real questions we need to be asking is who funneled his money? Why was he cleaning? What deals was he doing? Who was he connecting? Right? The pedo talk and all that is a smokescreen for small minds. Right? The real story is the deals. Who was he connecting? Who was he doing it for? Because that will destroy governments. Right? Not just a prime minister because he was, connected with Mendelssohn and Andrew. Right? I am talking entire countries will fall if you got to the real story and the deals. And that is what is being hidden in the files. The files are all about the influence peddling and the pedo shit. It's not about the real deals. And if the real deals were sent out, everyone is going to jail. And that is what needs to come out. But it won't. There is no government in the world, and I bet you Trump has been pressured by so many governments, including ours, to make sure that those deal documents never, ever come out. The bank accounts, the emails, connecting two people. Most of these deals will never be done electronically, right? But there'll be clues to where the deals were done and how they were done. The reason that a lot of these guys have private jets and massive yachts to do deals is to do the deals because you do them out of prying eyes, you do them in international airspace, you do them in international waters, and they are signed, sealed, and delivered, and then you move on. So scratch the surface of the headlines and look a bit deeper about what is really behind this Epstein stuff. And when Khashoggi died, the whole world just went, because there wasn't social media. There wasn't the press cycle back then. news stories died really quickly. But this will be an interesting take to see if the deals, and I personally, I doubt that they'll ever come out. Um, there is too much at stake for the world. And I'm talking everyone on both sides. Doesn't matter which side of politics you're on, the deals happen from both sides. And they happen all the time. All the top businessmen, you'll find there'll be businessmen that you hold, up as bastions of the business community. They'll all be involved in deals. Um, and that is what is being hidden. The rest of it, as I said, is just a pure smokescreen to keep the small minds chattering away, banging on about, release the files, release the files. So moving on, because I'm going to run out of time. So into Australia. So off that depressing note, we've got some interesting numbers. I just pulled out some numbers today just to have a quick check what's going on, and it's not good. Population since the end of last year is up nearly 1% already, 253,000 people. Our debt is now at 1 trillion. Inflation is up at 3.8%, way up past where they want it to be. Our interest rates are up at 3.85%, going up again. I expect that they'll hit 4.2, probably by May. Unemployment's up at 4.1%, and growing. Building permits are down 14% month on month. And then the month before that, they were down 13%. But year on year, they're up 0.4. But year on year comparison, before that, it was we were up only like 0.5 or 0.6. So it's been fairly stagnant year on year. But in the last few months, it's slid right off the cliff. So buying a house is getting tougher because building permits is what you need to build houses. So we are not building houses. So I just thought that's quite an interesting, just a quick snapshot of where the country is at, and it's basically not good. Um, I'll dig out some more data for next time. I only did this like 5 minutes before I jumped on here. But I think I might run a tracker and between every 2 weeks, and we can update this and actually create a bit of a thing, same as I do with the federal voting intention, and then we can run some comparisons and just start to see where we're running. I might do up a table and then we can just keep the numbers going. So it's quite an interesting thing because when we see the trends, we'll really see what's happening. The unemployment number being at 4.1 is, everyone will say it's great, but no, 4.1 is not good. They do say 5% is full employment, but in economies like this, where um, where the low skilled are now starting to lose their job, watch that number go up, and watch it go up pretty quickly. Um, War on family business. This is shocking. The um, the CFMEU took a court action to it went through federal court. It allows CFMEU style work rules to have open access. So basically, unions can have open access to any small family business. So imagine this: you run a small restaurant with, say, 10 staff, and someone in your staff says, I want to be a shop steward, contacts the union associated with, the union has free access to come and unionize your workforce. Your business is stuffed. It's gone, finished, over, if that happens. Albanese has allowed this to happen. And the problem with this is If you have no small businesses, you have no middle class, you have no culture, you have no society. The destruction of the middle class and small biz is greater than any other destruction that can happen. You could have 20 billion people migrate here. If they all created small businesses, you would have a thriving economy. But if they're moving here and not starting small businesses, right, 2.5 million small businesses are collapsing now at a rapid rate, and they're not being replaced. Most of those workers now that are coming into this country are moving straight into government jobs. And now I'm not talking government direct jobs, it could be government indirect jobs, which also means jobs, right, that are backed by your tax dollar, not being created out of the economy. That's a socialist country. We are now at the point where if small businesses keep closing and sliding backwards, yes, there is going to be a lot of opportunity for those that come in and pick some up and do stuff together, but the larger opportunity is going to leave the country. I'm dealing with people on a daily basis who phone me up and say, how long does it take to get out? I want to survive. All right. The first wave was normally those who are easy to move, digital nomads, people with businesses that like consulting and all that sort of stuff, where they can move, fly in, fly out. Already had a lot of customers overseas. I am now seeing manufacturing companies, companies with all sorts of different business styles that are heavily dependent on Australia. How can I get rid of some of my workforce? How can I restructure? How can I take advantage of offshoring? How can I take advantage of moving half of my operations overseas? Where can I access Asian markets? Where can I access the US markets? Right. This has never before been seen in the numbers that we're seeing it. It is ridiculous, the numbers. Now, what's going to happen is a lot of these small businesses, and I was talking to a friend of mine in Melbourne, he works in liquidation stuff, and he was saying most of these small businesses have been liquidated in Australia, but they've been started up overseas. They're just walking away. They're liquidating because of the ATO bills. They're liquidating because they just want to screw the credit card companies, and they're happy to take bankruptcy here. One person takes the bankruptcy, the other person phoenixes the company offshore. You can get transport to be able to leave the country if you're a bankrupt, but I dare say that they'll close that loophole very soon because they know that people are phoenixing their businesses outside of the country. They are destroying their own culture base and replacing it with those that will work for the government. So we need to stop. The first thing that any new party, whether it's One Nation or whether it's the Liberals, get their shit together is they need to bring back the middle class. They need to bring back small business. If none of them do that, we do not have a country. So this is the biggest war on our country at the moment. I actually think it's bigger than immigration, is that the removal of small business and the ability to generate your own income rather than have it relied on by the government. If you're in the NDIS at the moment and that's your business, you are beholden to the government and you will lose out because all the small businesses that are going to be directly or indirectly fed by government, they will be shrunk and shrunk and shrunk and shrunk until there's only 2 or 3 majors left. And you'll either lose your jobs to immigrants or you'll lose your jobs to humanoid robots or whatever. But they will take the human element out and replace, well, when I say the human, the high cost human element out and replace it by low cost. So this is the war that we need to be focusing on. And this is the red tape and the taxes and all the bullshit that we need to be getting rid of. I fear even one nation will not solve that problem because they don't know how to. Follow up from the last, so 2 weeks ago, our good old mate Angus Taylor took over. He got elected 34-17. He's announced his new shadow cabinet. A lot of new speeches, but it seems to be the same old policies just dressed up. So at the moment, it's all talk, no action. He's taken a few votes back, but that was going to happen purely and simply because a new leader would bring the Russidons that hated Susan back. So that's 2 or 3%. It's when he gets down to the actual policy and for him to win and make any difference whatsoever, they can't rely on the old, we will release our policies at the election time. They're going to have to release their policies basically before the end of this year, fully costed, fully worked out, basically be full campaign mode with their policies from now until whenever the election's held. I still personally think we're going to go early because Albo is going to start running scared that he's going to lose too many votes to Labor or other. Sorry, Albo is going to lose too many votes from Labor to One Nation and end up White Anthony himself. So they'll be running the numbers and working out what is good for the Labor Party. Mind you, nothing's good for Australia whenever they're doing their numbers. They're always talking about themselves and they're always talking about how to keep their power. Taylor will be doing the same thing. What Taylor and what I think the Libs will do is they will sacrifice the Nationals, and this is why the Nationals were so stupid coming back into coalition, is the Libs will sacrifice the Nationals to One Nation. The Libs will go after the inner city seats that they can win, and they can do some interesting stuff there. The demographic change in a lot of the seats that they lost to the Teals and even to Labor weren't to do with a lot of the positioning, were more to do with the change of demographics. The change of demographics in a lot of those seats meant that the voter base there wasn't going to vote for a Labor light or a Teal light looking group. They want the real thing. They want real hard socialism, right? So that's where they will vote Labor and the Teals in a lot of those seats. But the next ring of seats out, and especially in the multicultural seats, or the big immigrant seats, probably not the Muslim immigrants, but definitely the Indians, Chinese, Vietnamese, South American, Brazil, South Africa, some African nations that are used to or escaping socialism and communist overreach. If the Libs can target themselves to those sort of seats, and there's quite a few of them, enough that they could make a dent. They won't win. Labor will definitely win the next election, but they've really got to change where the demographics are now out. The problem is, as is in the last slides, the small business section's gone, and the small business guys were the guys that were doing a lot of the force behind the Libs, right? The big end of town has always been Labor, has always voted Labor. They're also Chardonnay socialists. They all went to the same schools. They all hang out together, especially in the public service and the large ASX companies. They're all good little communists. But the Libs have to find out where their new base is, and they have to find a new base and new base quick, and they need to tailor their policies to that base, and they need to tailor their policies there very quickly. Is that going to happen? Doubt it. Too many moderates still in the party. The moderates will want them to go after the teal seats because they're the seats they lost, and they'll want to try and get them back because they're the suburbs they live in. And most of the moderates in the Liberal Party are all champagne socialists in their own right, but they're just in a different circle. So don't expect a lot of change from Angus and his team, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let me just see. I thought I saw a question come up. Okay, no, was there someone talking to me? Oh, that's a great investigative tool that's been built to dig into the. Oh, yeah, there's a couple of them out there actually. Yeah, thanks, Matt. What's that? The web IO. That is. There's a couple of really good tools out there. I actually just don't mind the DOJ website, the raw data. You can actually just plow yourself through it, grab a cup of coffee, a couple of hours on the couch and just plow through the DOJ website. You can find some interesting stuff in there. Okay, let's get down to our latest poll. So this is an essential poll that came out today, February 25th. Yeah, yesterday. So when you look at it, not a lot's changed since last week. ALP at 30%, LNP at 26%. They've risen one or two because they're back together again now. So they've gone from 14 and whatever, and they've picked up a few people. Essential is normally always higher for the LNP than others. Sorry. Essential is normally higher for the majors than others. One Nation 22, that's pretty much where they are. They've been there now for 2 consecutive polls, so they may have topped out in some regions, and we'll go from there. Greens at 11, they're going to bounce around that 10 mark because that's where they've always been. The two-party preferred is the LNP on 48, ALP on 47. Basically, that means no one wins government, right? Because you need 50%. So undecided 4%. So you could basically say, let's just split that 2 and 2. So it's 50-49. Once again, so it's a dead horse race. But the unknowns are the 3-cornered contest between the LNP, Liberals, Nationals, and One Nation. But we're also going to start seeing some 3-cornered contests on the ALP side as well, which will be very interesting. So the two-party preferred here, I would just scrap it and go, it's a waste of fucking time. We really don't know until we can get some more in-depth polling, which will be in the process of being done. This is the comparison of 2 essential polls, one from October 2025 and the latest one, February 2026. The most interesting point that I see here is the biggest reduction of vote to One Nation is from the ALP. If you look at it, 2% went to the Greens. Let's just say top goes straight to One Nation, right? So there's 1%. So now we've got 6% to get rid of. LNP is back at square. Fon's got to pick up 7, right? So you've got 1 from top, so now we need 6. You've got the Greens have picked up 2. Okay, we must be out with the other. But that 6%, you could pretty much say, let's say 6% of it goes to, or 4% of it goes to One Nation and 2% of it goes to the Greens. You are heavily still, the One Nation's heavily still sucking ALP votes. So the LNP vote that has gone to One Nation is pretty much, you can say, has gone. Over the last 3 months, the One Nation vote hasn't changed. Sorry, the LNP vote hasn't changed. The One Nation vote has changed, and the largest part of that has come from the ALP. That is going to be scaring the ALP pollsters more than what's been reported in the news. The headlines in the news are deflecting that Labor is losing votes. The right faction of the ALP right now will be doing its numbers on Albo, and you can see how scared Albo is by how he's going on Karl Stefanovic, how he's how he's placing himself in the media, how he's placing himself with things like the Grace Tame scandal, right? He is doing everything he can to stop that vote leaving. And I would expect in the next couple of essential polls to see the ALP vote get into the 20s. When we start seeing the ALP, LNP vote, One Nation vote, all looking at around 24, 25, 26%, the ALP will be so shit scared that it'll want to do something, and it knows that One Nation preferences flow back to it better than they do to One Nation. From One Nation to the LNP, that they will trigger an election. An early election will do a number of things. An early election will put One Nation, people first, CATA, shooters, fishers and farmers, Centre Alliance, all those off guard. It will, and especially if they go straight after South Australia, and South Australia will be a litmus test. If One Nation do very well in South Australia, the ALP will run shit scared, because they will want their own power base and to keep power. So the Liberals and Nationals at the lowest I think they're ever going to get. They may go drift a little bit down or come a little bit up, but the ALP is where the pain is at. And we're seeing it here in the numbers. The numbers don't lie, right? The numbers don't lie. It's in the numbers. And this is why you will hardly ever see anywhere in the media polls side by side. Because the poll, if you put polls side by side like I've done here, it shows that the ALP is losing more than the LNP. The LNP is in a bad way, but it's in a pretty stable bad way. Like, it's on life support. At 26%, mate, they're in the ICU. They've got bloody drips and machines and everything going. But the ALP's just been hit by a car or a truck, and it's about to join the LNP in life support. And that is what's going to be worrying. And that is why the spin doctors aren't allowing polls to be put side by side. Why they've got the focus so squarely and heavily on One Nation. Why the ALP? So why, if the ALP was so secure in their position, why the moment Angus Taylor took the Libs leadership, were they running scare campaign ads? Because they knew they had to secure their base. The ALP at the moment, everything it is doing is showing two things. One, it knows it's in serious trouble. Two, it's getting ready to pull the trigger on an early election. Doesn't mean it will. If One Nation fails in South Australia, and for some miraculous reason the ALP come through and end up with a stronger position in South Australia, highly on the cards, mind you, a lot of this goes away. A lot of the pressure goes away. The right faction will be doing the numbers on whether to roll Albo. If that ALP number goes below 30% and stays below 30% like the LNP number, Albo has lost his job. He will go. Chalmers will go. Chris Bowen will go. And they will replace them, in my mind, with people worse, but they'll be from the right faction. So watch this space, people. I know I keep saying that, but this is really interesting. That the numbers now are basically saying that we don't know where our preferences are going. The majors are on life support or heading to life support, and one nation is the only option outside of the major parties. Because the ALP numbers, if the ALP voters wanted to stay on the left, they would have gone to the Greens. But they're in protest mode as well, so they're going to One Nation. Right. So that's the worst thing with One Nation, means that once the ticket comes about and there is other centre-left parties, they will take a few votes. And once there is other right parties, they will take votes from One Nation. And then the preference flows are all over the place. I would hate to be counting preferences at this next election, because if it goes the way like some elections in the past have gone, where you've ended up with 12 and 13 candidates in seats and preference flows going all which way but loose, it's long nights of counting, and you end up with some very interesting outcomes. This is also the time when independents can do the best. So if you've got a very well-known independent and they are known in the community, normally people know the name but don't know why they know the name. So a good news presenter, the weather girl, or guy, the local councillor that is always in the news, a school teacher that is good on, I don't know, counting cupcakes or something. Normally a good community leader can do very well in some of these seats where there is a lot of turmoil. So the race to the top is going to be a good one. So thank you, guys. I'm going to leave it there. I've hit time. And thank you for being on again tonight. And I look forward to updating you next week, not next week, week after, in a fortnight's time, on some other things. So thank you very much, guys. Have a very good week, and we'll keep going. Cheers.